Welcome to this podcast. This is episode number 15. I'm Tim Mitra, and I'm in Toronto, Ontario. And I'm joined once again by Hammond Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
And I'm also joined by Jonathan Kuline over there in Mississauga, Ontario.
I'm back!
Woo-hoo. Hey, we're going to see Star Wars at 7 p.m. tomorrow, and that's at the Queensway Theatre, Jonathan?
No, we're going to the one up by Square One, the Mississauga.
Oh,
yes.
Right. Yeah.
That one.
It's a good thing I asked because I would have gone to the wrong theater tomorrow. That would have been...
Yeah, they're the ones with the IMAX theater. Alas, Queensway, it does not have...
Oh, we're watching it in 3D IMAX?
3D IMAX, you got it.
Ooh, hey. How about you, Hammy? What are you going to enjoy the splendor of the Star Wars, the War of the Stars?
So it'll be traditional cinema, not 3D or IMAX or anything.
Really?
At 7 p.m. Pacific time. So around the time you're coming out of the film, I'll be walking into the film.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So mental note, tweet Jaime as walking out of theater.
Oh, yeah. I'm wise enough to do that. Like my social media interaction will be severely limited come, I don't know, 8 a.m. probably, because I'll be all right, wherever it starts premiering around the world.
Did you guys read any of the spoiler-free reviews that were out this week?
I only read enough to read like good or not. I glanced ever so lightly at those.
Yeah, I didn't really want to look at that much. I didn't want to see anything, but unfortunately my eye caught. I was preparing for another picking up another link for the show. My eyes glanced over at Mark Hamill and saw a couple of words I didn't want to see. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but I wanted to save that for myself.
Yeah, there's a few different reviews out there that say they're spoiler free, but they say, "Oh my God, don't let anybody spoil it for you." I'm like, well,
shut the fuck up.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for wrecking our rating on our podcast too.
Oh, by the way, spoiler alert.
Yeah. Nice. Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive in with some fact checks, since we obviously we are in need of a fact check guy on the show.
Yes, I think I've earned my keep here. I'll come back in with fact checks since I was off last week, so I can point fingers this time. So 111 in first appearance of Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Captain America: Civil War. I think one of you guys called it Avengers: Civil War. 133, Jeremy Renner plays Hawkeye, a member of the Avengers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Jeremy Irons, I swear it was.
That would be Alfred. You're thinking of Alfred. That's different. 253, Mia Kirshner plays Spock's mother and Michael Burnham's adopted mother. Her name's Amanda Grayson on Star Trek Discovery. 420, Wally West is in fact not the Flash anymore in the comic books. Barry Allen returned from the dead in the DC crossover event Final Crisis in 2008 and reclaimed his mantle as the Flash.
So he came back from the dead?
They killed him off in 1986 as part of the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was a huge epic crossover. He sacrificed himself to save the world, and Wally West took over the mantle from Kid Flash to the Flash, and he was the Flash for most of my adolescence and early adulthood, as I'm sure he was for Jaime. And then 2008, Jeff Johns, who's of course now one of the creative gurus at DC, decided that he was his favorite Flash, so he brought him back.
Really?
Yeah. 530, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the sitcom, ran for 4 seasons on ABC television, beginning in 1996, and then it moved for its last 3 seasons to the WB.
Oh, really? Okay. So, and Carolyn Ray was Canadian, isn't she?
I don't know, but I know she was on it. Yeah. She was one of the ants that she has on the show. Yeah.
And who was the other ant?
Ooh, that's a good question. Wow.
See, not so smart now, are we?
I must admit, I did not watch more than a handful of seconds of the show, and it was really only to see Melissa Joan Hart, so I don't really have strong recollections of that one. 2043, there have been 2 previous revivals of The Twilight Zone. One was on from 1985 to 89 on CBS, and the other was 2002 to 2003 on the UPN channel. And that is all your corrections for this week.
Wow.
Fact checkery.
So you've put a bunch of movie news things on here. Do you want to lead us into some of that? Or
yeah, I think we definitely want to start at the top on this one, because this was the news that came out sort of after you guys recorded last week, that Quentin Tarantino and J.J. Abrams have been talking about doing a Star Trek project. And following out of that, there was all these different, people asking questions. Oh, what would it be about? And what could you do? And Patrick Stewart went on the record and said, I've always wanted to be in a Tarantino movie. Maybe I'd come back and play Picard, which he had previously said he wasn't going to do again. So we went from, who knows what the future of Star Trek in the theaters is after Beyond, to Tarantino talking about doing an R-rated version of the film that could include Jean-Luc Picard, which is pretty cool.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Data and Tasha Yar.
Well, apparently, in one of the articles I read, and I believe it was Variety, so we'll give credit where credit's due, I think they said that Tarantino's favorite Star Trek episode was Yesterday's Enterprise, which we've talked about a couple times on this show.
Right, yeah.
One where of course, the Enterprise encounters this time rift. The Enterprise C comes through. It changes the future. Tasha Yar is on the ship again, and they have this quandary about what do they do? Do they send them back to their deaths? Do they let them stay in the future, even though they know that it could be a better future for them if they send them back to their deaths? And it's really probably one of the best episodes, I think we all agree, of the show. And apparently that's Tarantino's bag, and he said, I wouldn't mind riffing off that. So an R-rated, maybe TNG, maybe original series, J. Abrams, Quentin Tarantino slam could be pretty interesting for Trek. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that would be quite the different take for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew that it was up for fair game once they started using the F word on Star Trek Discovery, right?
Yeah, that probably helps ease it in a little bit of, if you're, I don't know, Entertainment Tonight or something's like, oh, new Star Trek movie's rated R, but not unprecedented. If you've been watching, on CBS All Access, Star Trek Discovery, a more mature and dark take on the Star Trek franchise. Like I can already write what the people are going to say and the anchors on that show. So that's to me.
Yeah, and they've already gotten into like the cannibal, the face eating, and really, it's not that far from Tarantino yet, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about that prospect. I think I'll take it with a grain of salt. I mean, lots of people express interest, but apparently JJ heard this was the thing and leapt upon it, and now is actively trying to woo Tarantino to commit. So that sounds like a pretty fun mishmash. I'm personally hoping for Samuel L. Jackson's cameos / vulgarity laden Klingon characters, or whatever he could come up with for that. All of his cast of recurring actors that he likes to bring into his films.
Yeah, like Tim Roth and
Harvey Keitel. Yeah, I think maybe that could be one of our when we're in our downtime over the holidays, we should start thinking about casting that movie starring the cast of Pulp Fiction as Star Trek characters.
Mm-hmm.
It could be fun. Let's see, what else have we got? So the DCEU getting a shakeup. So word is that in the wake of Justice League not doing quite what it was expected to do at the box office, that they're talking about lopping off some heads. Jeff Johns' name, somebody we just mentioned, is somebody who's been talked about as being removed from any potential role. This is again from Variety.com.
So who's Jeff Johns?
Jeff is the chief creative officer for DC.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
So he works across all the platforms. He works on the comics, he works on the TV shows, and he works on the films. But he actually co-wrote Wonder Woman, and had some pretty strong involvement there. And he came in sort of late on the game on Justice League. So he seems like a strange person to throw under the bus in this scenario. But apparently they're talking about some pretty dramatic shakeups over there, doing things differently. Apparently Zack Snyder is not going to be welcomed back with open arms if they decide to continue this universe that they're working on. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, because they've already got a few movies in the pipeline, right? We know they're going to try and do a Flash movie. There's a Wonder Woman 2 coming. There's been a buzz about whether they're going to do, they're talking about, obviously, Aquaman's coming. They're talking about Cyborg. They're going to spin all these different characters out. Maybe a Man of Steel 2. Wonder what that will do for the tone and look of those films if they decide to shuffle the deck at the leadership level there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think content for a future episode where we don't have, Discovery or the Orville to watch, we should do a little bit of a what if sort of scenario as to how we might change the DCEU so they wouldn't have had to do this sort of thing. Like a what if from each one of us, how we would have handled the mantle and delivered these movies.
All right. Well, that's a challenge accepted. That sounds like fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else.
Let's get the next two and go to the TV news.
Okay. So that's Jaime. You can kick us off there.
Yeah, this is more sci-fi stuff coming up on Netflix. So can't remember what we mentioned last time on the show. It was a George R.R. Martin property that I didn't recognize. Here's another sci-fi property I don't recognize, Old Man's War. But Netflix has got all sorts of great feelings for me in terms of their sort of handling of this sort of material. So I'm looking forward to this. We'll have links in the show notes for those of you transporting it home. Apparently follows a guy who's a military science type officer. It kind of sounds a little bit like the Altered Carbon thing that we mentioned, I think last episode, where you have like cloned, upgraded bodies and whatnot. So I'm kind of curious to see how those play out, having two at least superficially similar topics.
Yeah, it sounds neat.
So what's the next one?
Well, we'll jump over that middle one there. And we'll,
because our little friend over there, we want to protect.
So they announced.
Don't read that link, Jaime.
There's a So we're talking about The Walking Dead. Jaime's still got some catching up to do, so we're not going to spoil this week's Walking Dead. We'll skip over that. If you're a Walking Dead fan, I'm sure you're up to date with what's going on. It's into.
I didn't know there was controversy around, but
Yeah. So we'll skip ahead to Supergirl. So Supergirl, they announced, is going to be taking a hiatus this year. It's 2018. They are coming back on January 15th, and they're going to air episodes up until February 5th. But then it is going to take a hiatus. Legends of Tomorrow is going to move into its time slot, and the Black Lightning series that is coming on to the CW is going to take its place. So we're going to be 9 weeks without Supergirl, which is a pretty long stretch for a show like that. That's a lot of sort of momentum to lose. So they're going off the air from February 5th is the last episode, and they're not coming back again until the 9th of April.
This is in the wake of that news we had about the director, right?
It is, or the showrunner, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if that's, they really didn't make much about it beyond that, and I think there was always an intention to make a space for this Black Lightning series that's coming on, which actually looks pretty decent. But yeah, that's a very long break for a very good show. So it'll be interesting to see how they build that into the storyline, if they're going to leave you on a cliffhanger or what they're going to do to sort of keep that, keep people waiting around for, over 2 months to try and, come back and enjoy that series again.
Sure. So we're into the renewals now, or the 80s? What do you want to do?
We'll do renewals. 2 quick ones. So Netflix has announced that The Punisher is going to get a season 2. So obviously enough traffic there off of the series that premiered in October that they decided to come back with that. And they just announced today Mr. Robot is going to be getting a 4th season. So that's pretty exciting. Tonight is the season finale, I believe, of Mr. Robot for the year. So
that's a bit of a stretch. I don't know. Have you guys watched that show at all? I know I have, and I don't think Jaime has, right?
Yeah, I watched the first 2 seasons, but I haven't caught up this season yet.
Yeah, first 2 seasons, and then I'll have to binge season 3 in anticipation of season 4, apparently. So
yeah.
Okay, well then I'll reserve my comments then, I guess, on that. All right, so let's move on to the 80s.
So two little flashes from the past here. So Netflix has announced as part of its slate of upcoming animation that they're going to bring back She-Ra, Princess of Power. So I know that there's lots of the 80s kids out there that like the He-Man.
Wasn't she? Was she? Yeah, I was going to say she's Master of the Universe.
Yeah,
right?
she is. So I'm sure there'll be some interest in that show coming back, and of course Netflix, makes it a little more readily available for everybody. So that's pretty cool. And they also announced last week that they're going to, or I guess earlier this week, that they're going to bring The Dark Crystal back into theaters, remastered in 4K. It's only going to come back for 2 nights apparently in February, and then they're going to be releasing the 4K Blu-ray version of it. But it's a pretty neat opportunity to be able to see something like that at that level of quality in the theater. So I think that might be something worth. But
do you think 4K actually does make like a 70 millimeter movie better?
I don't know. I'd be curious. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what kind of restoration they've done on it, because it has been a full restoration. So I don't know if they went back to the original stock shot or how they've done it, but
the original film maybe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that does for a film like that, because obviously hopefully, for those who are maybe too young to have seen Dark Crystal in its original form in the 1980s, but it's done with a lot of costume work, a lot of puppetry. Some of that stuff does not hold up well when you put it under the microscope. So it'll be interesting to see if they can,
Did you watch it in the theater when you were a kid?
I did. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you did. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I believe I went to a birthday party to see that one when I was. I think it came out when I was 8. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I can tell you that. So I saw the. I guess it's the final cut of the Blade Runner movie in the theater, and I've seen the Blade Runner in the theater like a number of times, and of course watched it 1,000 times on television. And the last time I saw it was for the final cut, and it was when they had gone back and redone all the sound, and it made a huge difference on the movie.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. Very good.
Well, I think it'll be worth checking out. I mean, I like watching movies that I love on the big screen, especially ones that I either haven't seen in 30 years or that, in retrospect, the quality was not the highest when we were watching them, and the ripped screen on an old-fashioned projector in a rundown movie theater.
Stuck to the screen. Yeah, exactly. So I think I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but I had an opportunity to see Brazil and Time Bandits at the TIFF Lightbox Theater here, which is a theater in Toronto where they show classic films and foreign films and all kinds of stuff. And so I'd seen both of those movies a number of times, but I'd never seen either one of them on the big screen. And I gotta say, watching Time Bandits on the big screen, being able to see all the detail that Terry Gilliam puts into his shots, it was amazing. It was like watching a brand new film. I mean, I knew the story and all that kind of stuff, but there was sort of the nuances, and he had a reputation of fussing over the look of his film, of every shot, right? And so I had seen 12 Monkeys in the theater, and I'd like to see that one again. So I think that and there's a lot going on in Dark Crystal's where I'm going with this, right? So it might be interesting to see that in the big screen. Although I wonder, as a friend of mine was given the task of watching Firefly, and her kids sort of said, "When was this show from?" Because it just didn't hold up in terms of visual effects, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. But then I went to go see. They brought Back to the Future back for the anniversary last year,
right? Yeah.
And I went and saw it and took my son and your nephew, and we went and enjoyed. They showed the whole trilogy. I hung on for all three. My son didn't hang on for all three, but in the theater it was really cool. And now I'm not sure what I'm sure they weren't showing an original print. I'm sure they were showing a digital copy. So I don't know how that affects things, but it was fantastic to see that, hear it in that kind of volume, enjoy it in that atmosphere. It was a kick.
Was it pan and scan?
Yeah, thankfully not.
All right.
Yeah. And just a couple of last things. A couple of good trailers dropped this last week. We have Jessica Jones season 2, just a teaser, not much there, but awesome to see that character coming back, and really looking forward to seeing where they take her from what was really probably the best of those Netflix series to kick off their first season. So I'm excited about that. And Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is an animated picture that's coming out next Christmas. And it's by Lord and Miller, the two guys that got released from the Star Wars Han Solo film, who also did the Lego movie. They're doing this animated version of Spider-Man, and it's centered around what in comics is known as the Ultimate Spider-Man, which is Miles Morales, who is a mixed race person. So they're a bit of a departure from where traditional people associate Peter Parker as Spider-Man. So those will be the film debut of that character. So it's pretty exciting, and it looks really neat. It kind of feels like a fancy highbrow Pixar movie, action Pixar movie, or something like an Incredibles or something. It's cool.
Yeah. So how many actors have played Spider-Man? It's going to be like Batman now, and Superman, I guess, too, right?
Yeah. Ooh. I mean,
where are you counting, Tim? Because there's weird Japanese films and stuff too.
Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Or really?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. No, I know Tobey Maguire.
So main feature films. Sure. Main feature films.
Okay. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah. Well, of course, Jonathan and I grew up. I mean, I grew up with the CFTO version of Spider-Man, which is a Canadian animated cartoon, which you've probably seen, right? But that was on all the time. It was sort of filler television. You'd stumble across that show and just watch it. I can't even remember who produced that one. Maybe that's a fact check thing. You know what I'm talking about, Jonathan, right?
Oh yeah, I used to watch that at the cottage all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man cartoon series. I love that. That's where the theme song comes from, right?
Spider-Man. Yep.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see with this Into the Spider-Verse as to how closely they end up paralleling the comic book version discussion of this topic and whether they're going to use this as an opportunity to create like a little animated cinematic universe for the various spider people that come out of that
spider guys,
that top storyline, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and the Spider-Verse is they did a great crossover the last couple of years where they sort of had this expansion of all these different incarnations of the character, including Peter Parker, Miles Morales, and more. And it'll be really an interesting thing to see if they go beyond those two characters, as it looks like from the trailer that those two characters interact. It'll be really cool to see if they bring in all these far-flung and really interesting takes on this character, because I think everyone, somewhere who's had a comic book background, enjoys that world and those characters. So it'd be fun to see what they can do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So spoiler warning for those of you who haven't been paying attention, but this show is about the Star Trek Discovery, which is currently in a break, and it's also about the Orville by Seth MacFarlane. So we're going to be talking about episode 12, Mad Idolatry.
Idolatry.
Mad Idolatry. This, in fact, the season finale, episode number 12 of the Orville. So who's going to do the recap? Jonathan?
Oh, I get to do this one?
I don't know. Good to me. Who put the notes down?
All right. So we open the episode with a really lonely and bored Captain Ed Mercer wandering through the ship trying to find somebody to have a drink with. He tries Gordon, who's already in his jams and doesn't want to come out and play. He goes and tries John Lamar, the engineer, and he's got a date, so that's not going to work out.
I noticed that his eyes didn't track downwards in that shot. Did you notice that?
It's probably for the best. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, he ends up at the door of Bortus and his husband, who are just settling down for a nightcap, and they invite him in for a drink. The drink is a delightful concoction called Upsada, which is aged 9 years, and turns out to be a tall glass of Parasite. So it's supposed to go inside and be a very pleasurable experience when you consume it. So that was a pretty funny little, tall glass of mud that turns into a parasite. Pretty nasty, pretty funny. And then he decides he wants to learn more about Moclan culture, and so they teach him about their idea of game night.
Right.
So they break out something that looks like a cross between a pine cone and a football, and start playing this game that looks like a game of keep the ball in the air. They're throwing it around, and it's called Latchcomb. And they're playing a good game of Latchcomb, and Ed gets cocky and holds onto the ball for a second, and it pierces his hands.
And they yell, Latchcomb!
And they all yell, Latchcomb! Which was one of the funnier bits they've done. That was pretty good. You knew it was going to end badly, but you didn't know how badly it was going to end until Ed had this thing stuck through his hand. But that was pretty good. So after getting his hand attended to, Ed decides that he's going to try somebody else for a drink. So he hits up his first officer, Kelly, who's of course his ex-wife. And the two of them end up going and having a quiet drink, and they start talking about, in the wake of their feelings for each other that have developed over the last few episodes, the fact that they had this, interaction with Derulio, the person whom she had an affair with, who implied but didn't say that he may have affected her with his pheromones to make her want to sleep with him. The two of them talk about maybe getting back together. So this is sort of the underlying sort of theme for the whole episode is will they, won't they, Ed and Kelly, as it has been for sort of this whole first season. They've got this clear vibe thing going on. Are they going to get back together? So as this is going on, the Orville detects, after the two of them have had a night out drinking, clearly, because they're hungover on the bridge, the Orville detects a spatial anomaly. Kelly and Gordon and Isaac, the artificial creature, person, being?
Life form, yeah.
Life form, investigate the anomaly in a shuttle, and it turns out that there's a hidden planet. Three of them crash land the shuttle, and while they're down there, Kelly wanders off to go have a look at the locals, trying not to interfere, because just like on Star Trek, there is a non-interference with non-spacefaring people. So she goes and checks it out, encounters a couple of children. One of the children falls down, smacks her head on a rock, has a really nasty cut. Kelly gives her some medical treatment using her healing device, and the girl runs off, but remembers that her name is Kelly.
Right.
They leave the planet, and they head back to the ship, and And they realize once they get back there, oh, this is actually something unique. This is a multiphasic planet. So this means that for half the time it's in a different galaxy and half the time it's in their galaxy. And so they decide they're going to wait around for 11 days for the planet to reappear so they can check it out again. So they have 11 days of sort of floating around in space waiting. And they realize as they go down to the planet the second time that time seems to work differently on this planet. And they figure out that actually 700 years occurs for the every 11 days in their galaxy. Mm-hmm. So when Kelly goes back down to the planet, she encounters some of the locals. They see her and recognize her as somebody special. It turns out that Kelly is now viewed as a deity who can heal the sick because she helped this girl one time. And they've developed this whole religious system around her, which freaks her out because people are being, as they do with other religions, they are killing in her name. They are doing horrible things in her name. And so Kelly decides that she can't have this. So she goes back down to the planet to speak to their version of the Pope. We'll call him the Pope. Think so?
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The high priest.
The high priest, sure.
With the Pope hat.
With the guy, the hat that just looks a little bit like the Pope's hat.
Yeah, pontiff hat. Yeah. Or bishop. It's a bishop hat, actually.
Oh, there you go. So
whatever that's called.
So so she goes back down, talks to the Pope, reveals herself, says, hey, by the way, I'm not a god. I'm just a person. You need to disband this religion you've got built up. You're doing more harm than good. Just trust me, I'm fine. She cuts her hand open and then heals it to show him that it's not magic, it's not godlike, it's just perfectly fine. But in a not so subtle stab, thank you very much, at organized religion, the Pope's right hand man decides that he can't have the Pope telling the truth about what happened and sticks a knife in his back. And so after the crew returns to the Orville, another 11 days pass. So they just apparently sit in space for another 11 days. And when they go back to the planet the next time, they see that it's actually advanced another 700 years and is into the communications age, the computer age. And it turns out that their visit made no difference, that there are still people being killed in her name, and there are religious wars, and there's violence and all these different things. It did nothing to fix the problems.
Right.
So Kelly makes the choice that she wants to go down and live amongst these people.
And stay there, yeah.
And stay, because she thinks that that'll be able to fix things. And instead, Isaac volunteers to spend 700 years on the planet trying to fix things because
stealing the plot from the next generation with data.
Absolutely. So Isaac says, for me, 700 years is nothing. I don't care. I'll go down and do it. So he goes down to the planet. They sit there for another 11 days, at which point they've got to be running out of, I don't know what, like all the things that you would run out of in 33 days sitting in one space, one place in space. But
unless you had replicators and could make stuff up.
The best people in this entire episode are the people who didn't have to go down on these away missions. They got like a month off. This is great.
Yeah, no ways. Yeah.
So Isaac goes down to the planet. They 11 days go by, 700 years in his time. The planet spins around one more time and reappears in their galaxy. And this time they are spacefaring people. They encounter them. They bring back Isaac. They say, we've evolved out of its belief in the deity of Kelly without even Isaac's interference, that it was just something that was inevitable, that, all species have to go through this, sentient species have to go through this period of time in believing in these things, and eventually they just grow out of it, which is, again, a not very subtle dig at religion once again.
I was going to say, what does that say about organized religion?
Yeah. And so this whole episode was a pretty scathing indictment of organized religion versus science. And in the end, Ed and Kelly have a conversation. Kelly says, oh, Ed, you made all these decisions throughout this whole episode of trying to protect me. At one point, he doesn't make a full confession to his admiral and he gets in trouble. And so Kelly decides that they shouldn't pursue a relationship because Ed would just get himself into trouble. trouble, and she doesn't want that for him. So we end our first season of the Orville with the two of them deciding they're not going to be together, and the adventure in space continues for the
Yeah, so they can continue to have the Sam and Diane thing going on.
Yeah.
By the way, just a bit of a fact check here. The Bishop's hat is called a mitre.
Oh, good to know.
Apparently. So, hey, well, apparently it's a crossword puzzle thing. So if you're doing crossword puzzles, you're welcome. So it brings up an interesting thing. And I was watching this show, and I don't know why I never thought about it on Star Trek or The Next Generation or, Discovery or Deep Space Nine. Well, Deep Space Nine maybe, or even Enterprise. Okay, so these stories are centered around, 9 characters, 9 people that we know of roughly. I'm just pulling a number out of my hat, because the other part would be...
Oh, you mean out of your mitre?
Yeah, out of my mitre, yeah. So, what about the other shifts? When, because, I used to work in a bar, and I've worked in restaurants and stuff like that, and when they're open 24 hours, or they work, they're open for certain periods of time, these things are like boats, they're out there, like you said, they're out there for 33 days, but that's 33 series of 24 hours, right?
Yep.
Who's the assistant captain? What about the night shift people? What do they do? Just mop the floors while, and put away the garbage and take out the recycling? What happens? Where do those people come from? Or are we expected to believe that these people are just the only, they turn the bridge off when they go to bed at night, or what happens?
I'm going to send you guys a link. I'll put it on our page for our audience. There is a brilliant sketch on Robot Chicken
right.
that is literally called Star Trek The Next Generation's Night Crew.
Night Crew.
And it's about the people who it's even got Patrick Stewart doing Picard's voice and everything else.
Oh yeah.
And it's got the what happens when they all sign off for the day, who comes in and takes over for the night crew, and is gut-bustingly funny. I highly recommend it. I'll put it
the disco lights on and put the music on and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's genius. It's genius. It's very, very funny. But you're right. It's one of those unexplored things that they never really get into. How long can a captain be on duty? Realistically, he's working 8 hours a day? Is he on call for 24
hours? 12 hours, three 12-hour shifts. I don't know.
Yeah. So
3 on, 2 off.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. They hint briefly at a few different things in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Where
I was going to say The Next Generation for sure. Yeah.
So Data tends to be on the night shift because he doesn't need to sleep, so he'll that is an opportunity to take command or get command experience. Also, there was at least one episode where Dr. Crusher also did the same, and it came up because I think Counselor Troy came back from a conference or something, and she's like, "Oh, you're captaining the ship right now." And, I do it every once in a while, and I think it was related to her deciding to get the 3rd PIP and become a commander, even though it's not technically required as chief medical officer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And didn't Deanna Troy fly the Enterprise at one point? And does she she crashes it, right?
I want to say yes, but I feel like I'm inviting the fact-checked folks.
Yeah. She does an episode where it's a simulation, right? She has to do she has to send someone to their death as part of her training. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Crazy.
But yeah, again, it was. So, what do you guys think of this? As they've already announced that they had cut the season order down from 13 to 12. So this may or may not have been where they intended to leave things off. But where do you guys feel like this leaves us after our first season of the Orville?
Well, it's not much of a cliffhanger.
No,
for one, right? Which is sort of traditional in these kind of shows, right? Yeah, we'll sort of have to leave something. Well, mind you, though, I shouldn't say that because the Orville every episode seems to be wrapped up in a bow. Right? They managed to go through the first 40 minutes of a crisis, and then the last 10 minutes they solve the problem, whatever it is, right?
Right.
Almost too quickly, like in the Alara episode, right? And by the way, just fact check, Jonathan. Is it called a bottle episode?
A bottle.
I mean, like Lamar's episode,
no, it would be like a character exposition episode. A bottle episode is usually sort of contained in one. It's sort of a self-contained story, right?
Right. Like it can be pulled out of the genre at any point or played at any point.
Yeah, I mean, and a bottle episode is often it's what we were talking about before.
Canon,
well, no, a bottle episode is usually that would be where they were doing what they were doing in the middle of this series of the Orville, where they were recycling sets, they were going to cheap places. A bottle episode is usually it's where they lower the expense, right? Like they don't go to big fancy things. They don't do huge set pieces. They don't do anything fancy. A bottle episode is usually just a pretty self-contained little, don't use a lot of money, let's tell a story using what we got kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. So because Jaime Khan called the Lamar episode last week a bottle episode, and I'd never heard that before, and he wasn't sure if it was the correct term for that type of episode. But
yeah, I was doubting that it was the right term, and I was wrong. So there you go. It's good to have that.
Yeah. So I mean, this episode was kind of it's been done. I mean, like, again, I think my problem with the Orville is that they seem to be recycling plots, which I guess is a common problem with a lot of movies and things like that. A lot of TV shows, they tend to, as if people haven't ever read the seven plots of Greek tragedy or Greek theater.
Yeah,
there's like 7 styles of storytelling, right? So it was better than most of them, but it's so predictable. I mean, but even like I said, the thing about Isaac going off and reliving Data's sort of exposition of being around for however many years he was abandoned on a planet at one point, right? And they find his head in the like Data found his own head, or I forget how they do that.
Yeah, they find Data's head on an alien planet, and it turns out that he was transported back to the 1800s where he encountered Mark Twain,
right?
And then it turns out that there's a alien race that's coming to the past to take people as victims and absorb their energy. And it's actually not. I'm making it sound terrible. It was actually not a bad little 2-part episode, but when you try and explain it like that, it does sound a little convoluted. But at least there was original,
right? Yeah.
So, and
I mean, that's one thing you could say about the Twilight Zone. We talked about that before. Like the Twilight Zone. So how I envision the Twilight Zone. I don't know if you guys ever did like how much reading you guys did in grade school. There was a lot of short stories that I read when I was in school, and I really enjoyed the science fiction ones because there was a lot of space travel and all that kind of stuff, and what if kind of, like The Martian, like the movie The Martian, where you leave a guy on a planet by himself, what is he going to do to survive, right? And you just pull out all these different ideas from, a lot of the stories I read back in grade school were like that, like, when I was like 10, 11, 12 kind of thing, right? Twilight Zone was a show where they kind of got the best writers to come up with these best little, 1 hour long stories. And they were all relatively they were all self-contained. They never repeated a story or a plot or an idea. And they were all, centered around different things like what if the bomb goes off? How are you going to survive? Or, what if Dracula was really a guy, kind of thing, or was real. But, or what if, somebody's, getting plastic surgery and they're hoping the surgery works and they take off her bandages and she's gorgeous to our standard, but she's ugly to the people in her surrounding environments, right? And sort of that story was about what is beauty really, right? And again, they could do so much with these kind of shows like The Orville or even Discovery. Well, Discovery is meant to be a serial, right? So it's kind of like The Walking Dead. It's meant to just continue as one big long story, right? But I'm a little disappointed that The Orville really hasn't sort of stretched what they could do. Either they should have gone totally funny, which is what we all expected them to do, right? Because that's the kind of show that Seth MacFarlane has done up to this point. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets canceled. Like it's just not been. It's been great to watch. I like the character. I like some of the characters. I'm not really sold on it. It's not anywhere. It doesn't hold a candle to anything Star Trek-ish, in my opinion, right? So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, we know they're getting a season 2. They've already confirmed that, so that's happening. Okay. So, I wonder where they go from here. And I couldn't help but notice that this week's episode was written and directed by Brennan Braga, who, of course, was one of the longtime writers for Star Trek.
Oh yeah.
And you're right. Like it feels like this interesting homage, and there are lots of nice little moments. And I'm all for genre television, but I agree. I think they're going to need to step up their game to keep my interest going into season 2 because I think I need like the funny moments are funny. Gordon keeps getting these great lines. He had another great line this week where he asks, "Can you translate that for dumb guys who might also be a little drunk?" There are some funny moments, but it's not funny enough to be funny, and it's not original enough to be great sci-fi. It just feels like it's the middle. And when there's so much good television out there, it's awfully hard to settle in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, like I said, there are better shows on television, better sci-fi shows that I can name that I have stopped watching, and because they just, I mean, not, and The Orville is, in my opinion, is a little less than that. Yeah. Like I should stop watching The Orville. Let's put it that way. Like, it's, kind of how I sort of feel about it. I mean, like I stopped watching Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. About a season and a half ago because it just wasn't really interesting interesting enough for me. Maybe it was for you guys who know the universe, right? But being someone from the outside who hasn't followed that whole Marvel universe thing evolve, I mean, Coulson is like the guy who dies in the second movie, I believe, right? And he's got this sort of mysterious, how did he get, healed and whatever. And that was kind of interesting for about 5 minutes,
Yeah.
And they're coming back with season 4 now, I hear, right? So,
I think, I don't know if it's season 4. I know they just started a new season 2 weeks ago. I must admit I forgot to set my PVR, so I'm going to have to catch up because I have actually up to date. I thought last season was actually pretty strong. They did 2 storylines. They've actually been breaking it up into sort of almost like mini seasons. Last year they did sort of the first half was a whole Ghost Rider storyline, and the second half was a whole alternate universe, beyond the veil kind of thing. And they were both actually pretty decently strong. So enough to bring me back for this season. Although the reason it didn't record on my PVR is they have moved it to Friday nights now, which does not, for me, seem like they have a lot of faith left in it. So I have a suspicion this may be the last season. As a matter of fact, I read a story the other day where Ming-Na Wen, who is one of the lead characters in the show, made a remark where she almost came out and said the show is done for, but sort of backpedaled a little bit.
Oh.
So, I mean, they had a good run. I mean, it wasn't what we were promised. We were promised a show that was going to tie into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they did in a really interesting way during the first season, tied it into Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and then it just sort of dropped off the map and became its own thing. And we know that there's all these stories about the political differences between the TV wing and the movie wing of Marvel, and there's all this intrigue, but if you enjoy it for what it is, it's fine, but it's never what they promised us. And
didn't they bring Samuel Jackson into this one for a bit too?
I don't remember if they brought Samuel Jackson in, but they did cross because the plot of season, I want to say 2 or 3, tied into the events in Sokovia in Avengers 2, where they show up with the helicarrier. That was sort of whole plot line in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But it seemed like we sort of got sold a bill of goods that this was going to be the Marvel Cinematic TV show, but it actually turned out to be just a Marvel TV show.
Yeah, see, and I've never watched Arrow, because I never got warmed up to it, and I haven't watched Daredevil either. And then I watched Supergirl. I watched the first couple of episodes of The Flash, but I didn't find it that good. That I know you do because you love the character, right? But
I like that show because it's joyous. Jaime, you watch that show as well, don't you?
I don't really watch the Arrowverse shows except for Supergirl, and when they do the crossovers, like they had the big 2-nighter recently with all of those shows.
Yeah,
when they were fighting the
the
alternate universe versions.
Yep. Yeah. I find the shows all really have different tones. Arrow is much more sort of dark and somber and grounded than the other ones. Flash tends to be a little more it sort of feels very family. It's got a very family vibe to it. Everybody's we're all in this together. We all love each other, and we have our problems, but we all work it out. And I find Legends of Tomorrow a little hit and miss. I love that they reach for things. They really try. They go to some really weird places in the DC universe that I just never thought I would ever see. They bring the most obscure characters to life, and I love them for it, but it's just not a terribly great show. But Supergirl is by far my favorite, and it's just hands down the best work that they're doing, and it might be the best genre TV show out there right now, just because it's so complex. The characters are really realized. Melissa Benoist is a joy to watch. Kyler Lee is great as her sister. There's so much to enjoy in that world. That and The Flash are my 2 favorites, and I could see a world where I we talk about cutting off shows. I could see a world where I stop watching Legends, and I see a world where I could stop watching Arrow, but I can't see a world where I drop the other 2 anytime soon. Cool.
All right, so I want to ask something before we jump into our picks or finish off the show here. But so this is for everybody, kind of thing, roundtable, if you will. When you think about what was the best Discovery episode, or sort of plot or vehicle, if you will, because it's not really one show or one episode, and what was the best Orville episode? So Jaime, why don't you tell us what you think about those two.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that Discovery is essentially one long episode, because I was having trouble remembering what happens in which particular episode. It just continues on through. So for Discovery, I want to say it was I can't remember if it was before Choose Your Pain or right after, where they had a lot of the really great interactions with Cadet Tilly and Stamets and Michael Burnham. And we also may or may not have seen in the same episode, again, because there's so many plots going on that continue through the entire season, where we saw more of just like how dark Captain Lorca was and his whole interaction with the Admiral. I thought that was all pretty good. And I want to say it was like Leth or Leith, L-E-T-H.
Yeah.
So somewhere around there is where I think I felt it was like really hitting its stride.
And what about let's do Discovery first, Jonathan. What do you think about Discovery?
Yeah, I agree with Jaime. That was a great episode. I think as because it was so interconnected, it's really hard. There weren't a lot of sort of self-contained moments. They really felt like there was a lot of sort of continuing narrative. But I think as a standalone, I think it's hard to compare to Magic Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, which was the return of Harry Mudd, the time loop episode. There was just that one, even though it was a trope, even though they went back to, something that's been done in science fiction, they did it really, really well. It was very satisfying. It actually advanced the character development while being entertaining, while being humorous, while being exciting. I think that was the one that definitely stands out in my mind.
So I have to say that, like, as a fan of the original series, Harcourt Fenton Mudd is one of my favorite villains in that series, right? He's right up there with sort of the 66 Batman type campy character, right? In fact, I've watched those two episodes while we were watching Discovery. I just happened to see the two Harry Mudd episodes on the original series. So for me, when I heard that Rainn Wilson was going to come back and do Harry Mudd, I was a little doubtful. But I have to say that those two appearances have probably been my favorite parts of this thing. And of course, I love time travel and time loops and that kind of stuff. And I think that they did a really good job, like you said, on that episode where Harry Mudd comes back and just messes with them, right? I want to see the outtakes from that. Those with Rainn Wilson for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the Discovery? Jaime, what was the best part of the season for Discovery?
Orville.
Sorry, Orville. So Jaime, what about the Orville?
I think
how about the Orville instead?
There's probably 3 episodes that I think were my fave from the season. Priya, Krill, and Cupid's Dagger. I feel like they're the ones that are probably the most different from stuff you would normally see. And I feel like they probably handled the comedy and drama the best in terms of that balance. I think we've talked about before where maybe Tim, you and I might have talked about this last week, where like there were some episodes that felt like we think these were probably written first, even though they appeared later where they hadn't quite figured out the tone. It's a real close toss up. I really did like Cupid's Dagger a lot, but I think I'm going to lean towards Priya, even though we don't know if it's going to lead into anything, but I feel like it really examined the character really well, and the chemistry was great between Charlize Theron and Seth MacFarlane. So I like that one.
And what's in his drawer now that time has been reset? Yeah, interesting. How about you, John?
Yeah, I think Jaime nailed it. Those are, I think, the 3 best episodes, and I think I got to agree that Priya was probably the strongest. I mean, inarguably, Charlize Theron is the best actor they've had on the entire show so far. She just has a gravitas to her that, even though it's, this whole thing can be very nonsensical, it feels very grounded with somebody like her. She made that a very believable character with complex motivations, and it made it very realized in a very short period of time. So I think that was probably the standout for me, although I did enjoy the Krill BQ episode. That was one of my favorite moments where they barbecue the krill and look at the complexity of the dynamics between 2 groups of people that are fighting like that. And the Cupid's Dagger was a great one because it had that nice light touch. It didn't beat your brains in, which some of their episodes are a little bit, unfortunately, prone to doing. They just we talked about this week's episode where religion. It was clearly there was an agenda about science versus religion and evolution of people, and some of these ones have been a little ham-fisted. So when they can do a nice light touch episode like Cupid's Dagger, that's well handled.
Yeah, I have to agree with the from the point of view of liking those 3 as well. Probably Priya, I guess, is probably the best one again because I like that kind of time travel-y thing. But I mean, like, and there were some when they tried to be heavy, like with the episode about Bortus's daughter. That was a bit strong. And I'm not a big fan of the I mean, I like Rob Lowe as an actor and stuff like that, but I wasn't a big fan of that Cupid's Arrow episode. So I have to go with Priya too. But so it's interesting that some of the episodes they tried to be really sort of preachy on, and they again, as I said last week, they don't really. It's not I don't expect that kind of stuff from Seth MacFarlane, right? So I think there are bigger issues going on in the world that could be addressed than what they're doing here on the Orville, right? So
yep.
All right, okay. So do we want to talk about the movie that we're watching tomorrow, or do we want to save that?
Well, maybe we could make a couple of wild and completely unvalidated predictions.
Yeah, we were talking about this on one of our Slack groups today about because we have a Star Wars room that we set up there so that we don't end up spoiling it for people who haven't gone. Because people aren't. I don't know if you know this or not, but there are people who don't go on the first night and watch it.
What's wrong with them?
I know. I mean, I know for a fact that, like, based on the times I've seen the last 3, 4, 5 movies that we've had since 1982.
Yeah.
That I've seen each one of them several times in the theater, right? So, in fact, I think I told you, I went and watched the 3D version of The Phantom Menace, and it was awesome in 3D.
I took my son to see that one too, and I grit my teeth through a few of those scenes, but he had a blast. He loves it.
Yeah, for sure. So, we were joking about the fact about, like, who's going to die in this movie, and so the joke was, that I said, well, of course, Princess Leia's going to die, and they kind of went, well, duh, of course. And, well, you know what? No, she come back as CGI in the next movie, right? They've already established that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead.
It would be awfully hard to keep that going. I can't imagine they would kill her off knowing that she died in real life, even though it's the most convenient way for them to write her out.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but how are they going to do her? Are they going to have a funeral pyre like they had with Obi-Wan or not Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn?
Yeah.
Or Darth Vader even. Wasn't Darth Vader burned at one point?
They did. That's why we had the melted mask from Force Awakens, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So predictions of what? Like, is the movie going to be good? Kind of predictions. What's going to happen? Kind of predictions.
So here's
what do you want to see? Like, what?
Well, so here, let's talk about what you talked about 2 episodes ago when we talked about or was it last episode when we talked about the jackets, right? Somebody pointed out that, I mean, and it's been pointed out many, many times before, that The Force Awakens is a retelling of A New Hope.
Yeah.
Do you think that this movie is going to be a retelling of Empire Strikes Back?
No. And I'll tell you why. I think Rian Johnson,
or the training part where Luke is training on Dagobah.
I think there will be elements of that, and I think that's hard to get around. But I do think that Rian Johnson is too talented a filmmaker to simply do an homage.
Right. Okay.
I think that while I do enjoy J.J. Abrams' filmmaking, I do think that his is very derivative. His filmmaking is very much an homage to what he loved about Steven Spielberg and George Lucas movies growing up. Right. I think Rian Johnson is one of the best original filmmakers that we have right now.
What else has Rian Johnson done? I don't really know.
So he did Looper, of course, which was
that was a good movie.
Which was a great movie, and he did a film before that called Brick, which I may or may not have lent to you, which was. It was like a crime noir set in high school, starring, what was the boy's name from Third Rock from the Sun?
Yeah, him, yeah.
Gordon-Levitt, yes.
Yes, I did see Brick, yeah.
And I like that one a lot. When I saw that, I actually saw that before Looper and thought, like, this guy's got something. And then Looper really knocked my socks off. So I'm just excited about that kind of creativity, that kind of the way he looks at things and what he'll bring to the table there. And I just can't imagine you bring somebody who's got that much vision on board just to do an homage. I get why you want that for the relaunching of that universe, why JJ made sense for that first one. But if you're going to bring in somebody like that for the second one, I think there's got to be some vision there. And I think that that's going to take it to a different level.
So for me, I think I agree with Jonathan. I come at it from a slightly different angle, very similar, but I think I come from a less detailed angle. And I look at it more as, given the context of where The Force Awakens came out, it really absolutely needed to be a success. And I think playing it safe was the right move. Like if it was something I was going to do, that's how I would have done that, to sort of wash away the taste of The Phantom Menace and all the other prequels and say, this isn't like those. This is more like the stuff you like already. And let's make a really good, if not great, maybe not great, but at least a really good Star Wars movie.
Again, I don't understand what it is about The Phantom Menace that everybody hates. I mean,
so we'll have to cover that in a separate show, because it's more than we have left on this one. But
it had so many good things in it. It had Obi-Wan. It had Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. It had Qui-Gon Jinn was a good character. Forget about the midichlorians. Forget about the little kid that played Anakin. Forget about even his mother and Jar Jar Binks.
You just killed 4 of the worst parts of that movie off. How are we supposed to pick apart now? But I mean, from the point of view of like a Star Wars movie, it was great. I mean, you could say C-3PO was a pain in the ass in The New Hope too, right? Like, and he was. Go back and watch it. Yeah,
it's a pain in the ass.
Okay, well, let's see how fast we can do this, Jaime. Let's rip it to shreds. So, right. Okay, yeah, Jar Jar, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
The kid actor was terrible.
Yeah. The guy who becomes the Emperor, he's a horrible actor. I hate him.
The guy who, okay. So Darth Maul, great character. He had like 15 minutes of screen time in a 2.5 hour.
He was awesome. Like just watch the Darth Maul series.
Which season. Is okay, but he got 15 minutes of screen time in a 2.5 hour movie, and I had to watch pod racing for half an hour.
Yeah, but that's because it's George. It's because it's George Lucas.
But that's just
American Graffiti was his favorite movie he ever made, right?
So then go back and make another one of those. Don't make me watch that in Star Wars. Like,
well, there's always a bigger fish,
Yeah, and then just so much. There was just so much wasted stuff. I mean, the whole plot conceit of okay, let's talk about trade dispute. Like it was nonsensical. Yeah. Like take me somewhere new, take me somewhere interesting. Like that was just, there was so much nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, they could have messed with our minds like they did. I was watching. Was it just this weekend? Was the and I can't believe it's been like 15 years since the Picard, the Romulans clone Picard, and
Nemesis,
Nemesis. And what's the name of the actor again?
It was Tom Hardy, wasn't it?
Tom Hardy, yeah. He's an amazing actor, right?
He is.
Especially when he was in the shadow, and the way they did that with him in the shadows, like for the longest time until you saw that he kind of looked like Jean-Luc Picard, and that was a great. I mean, that's the kind of, they could have done that kind of story, like they could have told a story like that, right? Or the Wrath of Khan, that was another good one.
Yeah,
Wrath of Khan was a great tribute to the original series.
Yeah. You could have gone back and told something more. Obviously, you had to hit all those touch points.
But I keep reminding you, it's George fucking Lucas.
Okay, but again, we have him to thank for our childhood. We shouldn't despise him in his later years, but at the same time, we can forgive him, but we can't. I don't think we need to put it on a pedestal either. I've seen my dog take some
he just can't
bathroom breaks, but I'm not going to put it on a shelf and say it's awesome forever.
No,
it's just not, like, there's so much not good with those films. It's really hard to laud the stuff that is good. And his vision is amazing. His creativity for creating that world, his joy in bringing to life these unimaginable things for the rest of us is unparalleled. However, his writing is downright dreadful. His actual screenplay writing and his ear for dialogue is just awful. And frankly, his direction is not that great either. There's a reason why he didn't direct Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and those are two of the better Star Wars films.
Yeah. It's funny, like you could just take the Ewan McGregor scenes out of like any scenes that he was in throughout that those three movies, and those are except for the part where he's having the fight with Anakin Skywalker at the end there. That was horrible, but but because like when he's off doing his little investigation about the clone army and that kind of stuff, that was good stuff, but and the Boba Fett stuff, but
he was far away trying to keep the stink of Hayden Christensen and Padme off of him, and so therefore he gets to hold his head up while everyone else has to keep their head down about this for the rest of their careers.
Sure, I guess, Anyway, so I don't know, got a soft spot for Star Wars. It's like I don't know.
Yeah, any Star Wars is good Star Wars, although those were by far not the best Star Wars. And now we've got this thing to look forward to, and I'm stoked. Since I was a kid, it occurred to me, as a 12-year-old, when they finished doing Return of the Jedi, I thought to myself, all these actors are still young. They could do more. And I waited for the
12,
day.
You thought that?
Oh, absolutely. Because I continued after everybody else gave up. I was still reading the comic books and reading the novels. I still lived and loved Star Wars during that whole stretch where the rest of the world forgot about it. There was me and 5 other geeks who were holding out for more. And there were people at Marvel Comics, Dark Horse Comics, who and book publishers who were keeping the hope alive and publishing, keeping that world going. And, I dreamt of the day that they would ever bring Luke Skywalker back to my screen in any form where I could see where that adventure continued.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't think we'd get Luke Skywalker back into the Force Awakens. I was really surprised that he was like the main plot of the story, right?
Yeah.
I thought when they brought back, they were bringing back Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, that they were just going to have, they're going to hold the door open for somebody, kind of thing, like Stan Lee does in his movies,
Well, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of that passing of the torch, because that's the vibe I get from all the trailers so far in this one. It feels very much like a passing of the torch movie, and they have to do that because they've already killed off Harrison Ford's character, and Carrie's gone. So we're gonna all we've really got left to hold on to is Mark, and this is his movie. This is where he's going to be the emblematic elder statesman. I'm really keen to see if this is the passing of the torch movie, where this is he's going to pass the torch to Rey and Finn and Poe Dameron and all these up and coming characters, and say, what, you guys got it from here. Now you be the next generation of Star Wars. You carry the torch from here, and they build towards episode 9 and beyond as their own. The next generation takes over.
Right. Okay. You already said too much.
Okay. I'm guessing. I like to say for the record.
I'm not even trying to think about it. That's the thing, right? I want to sit back, put my head back. Here comes the drill. Eat some popcorn and enjoy Star Wars.
All right. Well, tomorrow I will elbow you if I'm onto it, and then we'll know.
We'll see. I think it will be not a retelling of Empire Strikes Back. I think it will be like a deconstruction of The Empire Strikes Back, or even like a total head fake where it starts to follow the same beats and then takes a left turn somewhere. That's sort of what I feel like they're setting up.
I'm telling you, that line from the trailer that came out, several months ago, where you hear Luke Skywalker say, "This isn't going to go the way you think it is." That is just the best clickbait of a trailer piece. I'm so ready for misdirection and so ready for different turns, and I welcome it. I'm hoping that it takes me some new places, and that's what I want from Rian Johnson as a director, and I want that on the table as something that I could come into a Star Wars movie and not be like, well, yeah, okay, of course. And that's unfortunately what Force Awakens was. It was great. There was lots of great moments. I liked the characters. I enjoyed it, but it was a lot of, okay, sure, yeah, of course that's where it went. Of course it did. I want something that's going to knock my socks off my feet, and I'm hoping it'll come.
All right, okay, all right. Let's wrap up and go to our things that we want to see, or our picks for the show. What do you got there, Jaime?
Yeah, this is I think last week or maybe 2 episodes ago we talked about the teaser trailer for the sequel to Jurassic World, that being Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Now we'll have the official trailer, and
official.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very much like Jurassic World. So if you like that movie, I think you'll like this one too. And if you didn't like that one, I don't think you're going to like this one either. It feels like it's going to go, at least from what we see in the trailer, it feels a little bit like
Star-Lord versus the dinosaurs.
Yeah, but it's also like Jurassic Park: The Lost World. It feels like it's going to hit some of those beats, given that Jurassic World is a soft reboot. Yeah, I guess it qualifies as a soft reboot. It pretends that I think Part 2 and 3 didn't happen, and that Jurassic Park was the only predecessor. It's complicated. It's like it's like the Prime versus Kelvin universe, J.J. Abrams verse sort of thing in Star Trek. It's complicated if you try to make it fit one continuity, but it feels like it'll have some of those same beats where they're having to bring the dinosaurs back, sort of thing.
I'll have to go back and watch that movie again. I kind of I missed that in the last Chris Pratt version.
Yeah, and just to make it even more like on point, Jeff Goldblum is returning. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, they had my money at Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, especially after Thor Ragnarok, he was so great as the Grandmaster.
Absolutely, that guy chews scenery like no one else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you just said just spoils Thor for me. Oh well.
He was in the movie trailer.
Yeah.
I again,
his existence is not a spoiler.
Doesn't matter. Just kidding. I'm putting it out of my mind, so I'm delighted when I see it. Okay, so Jonathan, what do you got? Or JPK, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So we've got we're only about a week and a bit away from Bright, which is a movie that's going to premiere on Netflix. This is a big budget flick that's coming to Netflix, starring Will Smith and Joel Edgerton, Nomi Rapace, who was from Prometheus, and directed by David Ayer, who did Suicide Squad, written by Max Landis, who did Chronicle. So this is a pretty high production value piece. I think they estimated the cost around $100 million. The premise is that it's a world where human and mythical creatures coexist, but in a modern way. So Will Smith is an LAPD cop, and his partner is an orc named Nick Jacoby, who is played by Joel Edgerton. And so it's about what it's like to be on the beat in that kind of world where, you can actually have magic interacting with technology, interacting with, police, and this sort of alternate current reality. So I'm pretty keen to see how they pull this together, and I'm really keen just because it's interesting to see Netflix go into this world. We've seen them do some high production value TV shows over the last few years. We've seen some really cool stuff come out of them, but this is, a $90 million. I think, I'm just looking it up now. $90 million is what they spent on this. So $90 million is not nothing to throw at a movie. It'll be interesting to see what this does for them, because it'd be neat to see if they can bring this kind of genre television on the movie side as opposed to just the television side. A nice tight 2 hours as opposed to having to watch 13 hours of television to catch up with something. So could be cool. Coming out on December 22nd.
Sounds interesting. Just in time for Christmas.
Just in time for Christmas break. You can take a couple days off and sit, ignore your family and your in-laws and watch.
Just as Jaime says, put the remote down and let the binge happen.
That's right.
Just slide right into it.
That's it.
All right. Okay. So my pick is a new friend of the show, Andreas Lutzwager, who I've always known as Andy, by the way, was telling me about a Star Trek fan movie called Prelude to Axanar, which I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Axanar, Prelude to Axanar, and there's a YouTube clip here of it's some pretty big name actors. Well, not big name actors, some pretty B-level actors, I guess, have sort of put this together and wanted to do it, but CBS put a halt to it or tried to stop it, or has tried to stop it. And the second link I've got here is basically they had $1 million budget, for this Star Trek fan movie, similar to what we were talking about with Star Trek Continues. And the second clip I've got here sort of does a sort of essay piece on all the various fan movies that have been done over time, but focusing on this particular one that CBS is trying to stop or wants to stop. This video or this little documentary was done a couple of years ago because they talk about Discovery coming out. They hadn't, so it was done a few years before Discovery. I think CBS had just announced that they were doing Discovery. So interesting stuff. Different kind of plot lines. The idea behind Prelude to Axanar, Prelude to Axanar, is about the Klingon War. So I guess there was a war between, which I guess is where we're coming into in Discovery. So lots of interesting storylines, and this video is about 20 minutes long, and it's sort of a retelling of the battles and stuff like that, and from the various points of different captains who were involved in those particular skirmishes. So interesting stuff. So Andy recommended that we check these guys out. So that's Prelude to Axanar, and this movie or this clip on YouTube, the $1 million Star Trek fan film that CBS wants to stop, and it's a couple of years old. But, yep. So there've been a number of fan things as we talked about before, and I think the Star Trek Continues was the one that was able to survive because it was all done not for profit. So not much CBS could say about that, really, I guess, right?
Yeah, the same reason they couldn't stop porn parodies from happening.
This is not Star Trek.
Sure. Well, it's interesting though. They do do make a point that Gene Roddenberry, thanked the fans from the get-go, obviously, because they saved it from, was it canceled in season 2 or something like that? Or it wasn't going to be renewed or whatever. And the fans, basically wrote to CBS, I think it was at the time, or NBC. I can't remember who originally had it. CBS, yeah. And demanded that they continue the show. And so Roddenberry's always been on the side of the fans and them supporting. And that's why there's a gazillion Star Trek books and, different plot lines and that kind of stuff from those, because people honor the characters and really enjoyed it, right? So yeah, far-reaching impact. And that's about that.
Cool.
All right, so that's it. So
let's see. By my clock, we've got 21 hours and 30 minutes till we
only one more sleep. That's all.
One more sleep. Yeah, you had the great Porg tweet, which you also put in the show notes for those who've not seen it.
One more sleep. I started putting up 12 more sleeps, and people were like, "What? What are you talking about?" I'm like, "What? Have you not been paying attention?"
Yeah. Anyway. I mean, it's too late. If you're listening to this show, it's way too late to follow this particular bit of advice. But I would advise people to, I guess, for the next one, try to see it on opening night. See it as early as you can on opening night, and try to avoid social media altogether. Try to avoid news feeds, Twitter, everything altogether until you see the movie.
And try and see it before our next episode, because I guarantee you that will be the crux of our next episode of this podcast.
Yeah,
we get a little kickback from the Star Wars, the Disney people. We're sending you to the theater just so you can enjoy Spotcast next time.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty. So, hey, how many people want to get a hold of you on the interwebs? Where would they look?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
And Jonathan, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter as @JPK News.
All right. And I am Timitra. I'm TIMMITRA on the Twitter machine. And we will see you guys in the future.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Up and away. Bye.
If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter @Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Gear Patrol calls their new dive watch the best sub-$500 dive watch, full stop. Men's Health rated them as the most stylish solar watch in the game. Who are we talking about? It's Movement. They're leveling up your gift giving with the sleekest watches you can buy and the biggest deals of the season. From their innovative ceramic materials to sexy automatic divers, from ultra-thin dress watches to solar-powered statement pieces, and everything in between, Movement is making sure you're the good gifter this year, for your family, your friends, or for yourself. And now you can take advantage of 30 to 50% off Movement's California clean watches, jewelry, and accessories to get them a gift they'll never forget. With fast, free shipping and returns and amazing bang for your buck, Movement makes for a relaxed shopping experience. And with one-size-fits-all watches, it's an easy, elegant gifting experience too. Shop 30 to 50% off now at mvmt.com. That's mvmt.com.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.